Greetings, metalheads. George here from No Nonsense Metal Reviews, and I'm back once again with another bands you need to hear recommendation. Another band that you seriously need to check out if you haven't done so already, and if you have, check them out again. So, before I do get stuck in, just an apologies in advance if I do sound a bit strange. I am actually recovering from the flu, which sucked, but hey, the show must go on. Finally getting over that. So the band that you need to hear is a band that I've talked about quite a lot on the channel here recently. They are a freaking excellent band. They're making waves. They're causing quite a lot of noise in the extreme music, death metal in particular, worlds at the minute. They're a band that there's a lot of talk about, and I am going to talk about them again today. The band in question is none other than 200 Stab Wounds. From Cleveland, Ohio, formed in 2019, this band currently has a couple of singles, 2 full-length albums, and an EP in their arsenal, and they're all really good, really high-quality death metal releases. This band is going places. There's no doubt about that. They released an absolute beast of an album in 2024, which is actually the album just showing off there. This is Manual Manic Procedures. Now, this album is a formidable album. I've said recently in my top 15 albums of 2024 review, they were the honorable mention. That album was the honorable mention. Reason being that I didn't get hold of a physical copy of that album until much later in the year, where I'd kind of already worked on the list, which is a shame. Didn't get the album sooner owing to the pretty excessive cost. It was like £15 for a standard dual case CD. And I know I moan about the cost of physical a lot here on the channel, and with good reason, because a standard dual case CD released on a major label like Metal Blade Records should not cost you £15. You know, hey, 10, 11, £12 maybe. Anyway, that album, if I had heard it earlier, would without a doubt have been way higher up. It would have been in my top 15, but it would have been way higher up on that higher end of the scale. It would have been in the top 5 maybe. It's an absolute beast of an album. It actually was rated the #1 album of 2024 according to the Fistful of Metal magazine. Hey, people are talking about this album, and with good reason. And 200 Stab Wounds are a freaking beast of a band. So they've been around for a few years, 5, getting on for 6 years now. Pretty impressive rate of releases, 2 full lengths, an EP, and some singles, as I say. But they are such a good band. They are one of the standouts in the modern death metal world. So, just to give you a bit of an idea of their sound, I know that you probably are familiar with them. Everyone's been hearing the name. Hey, with good reason, as I say. But they're an interesting mix of old school death metal, think, I don't know, Obituary, think Cannibal Corpse. Also, modern death metal. It's got a good sound. The production is good, sounds up to date, heavily groove laden. So this stuff is so freaking crushingly heavy, but it's also massively groovy. It's incorporating the grooves, not necessarily to the level of brutality that bands like, I don't know, Suffocation managed to combine good old death metal with brutal crushing grooves, but it's seriously groovy, headbang worthy stuff. Freaking great. So it's death metal packed with grooves, sounds good, but I will also say 200 Stab Wounds, these guys are good players. They are good musicians. You've got good technical guitar work in there. It's not tech death metal, no way. But you've got good playing, good guitar work, good drumming. The vocals are guttural, kind of like somewhere between Chris Barnes and Glenn Benton. It's kind of in that field, you know, think old school death metal vocals. Don't think just low end guttural where you can't actually decipher any of the lyrics at all. This is audible stuff. You can actually hear the words. which is interesting in death metal, of course. You know, makes for a nice different dynamic. Good stuff. Good musicians, good players, really good songs. So just taking you through the releases then. This is actually a recent, I think it was November 2024, reissue on Metal Blade Records of the debut EP. So this is Piles of Festering Decomposition. So that just sounds death metal. That sounds like it could have been a Carcass song title. Easy. This is a short and sweet release. So released originally, I think this was released in 2020. This EP was originally only 3 tracks, very short and sweet in fact. Just take that out to show you the insert. It's a nice sunny day today, so plenty of glare, but fitting to be talking about death metal. So here's our lineup in fact. At this stage it was Owen Pooley, drums, Steve Bull, guitars, vocals. We've got Ezra Cook, bass, and Lance Buckley on guitar. There's our up-and-coming death metalers. So this release, as I say, originally short, very short and sweet, 3 tracks, about 10 minutes long. This expanded version includes 2 extra tracks. So we've got another original track. We've got Digested Desire, solid track, another solid death metal number. We've also got a great cover of Carcass's Ruptured in Purulence from the Symphonies of Sickness album. One of my favourite Carcass songs ever. Just that intro, wow. So that's a great song for them to have covered. They've picked an absolute gem to cover there, and they've done the original absolute justice. Sounds freaking great. But the whole EP is a really good EP overall. Strong introduction to 200 Stab Wounds. They do real well here. It's good. It's not necessarily groundbreaking stuff in the sense that it's still death metal. Yes, it's easily definable as death metal, sounds modern, but even from this stage, 200 Stab Wounds had something different going on. So groovy, but really well freaking done. It's really quite difficult to put into words, but 200 Stab Wounds, absolute standout. Piles of Festering Decomposition, as I say, great introduction from the band. Things really kicked up a gear with the debut album from 2021. Again, this was recently reissued through Metal Blade Records. Obviously, they're on a major now, so they're doing well for themselves in that sense. This is the debut. This is Slave to the Scalpel. Pretty disgusting cover on there. Actually, let's take that out of the case. Try and avoid some of that horrendous glare. Disgusting. Another disgusting cover. Lineup, I believe, is the same at this stage. Yep. There's our death metalers. Cleveland, Ohio's finest death metal outfit. So, this album is really freaking good. The first time that I heard this album, I kind of knew that this band was going to be one that was going to become quite prominent, a bit of a standout, a band that's talked about a lot, and that has come to be the case with very, very good reason. This album, this debut, is really freaking strong. It kicks off with an absolute monster of a track, Skin Milk, which is a disgusting title. Not a nice mental image to conjure up there, but a very good, strong album opener. Brutal death metal. Some great riffs there. Some good guttural vocals. And I think that's a really interesting point with, and I've already mentioned the vocals, but an interesting point about Steve Bull's vocals. You can actually hear what he's saying, which is what I think kind of sets death metal vocalists apart. I don't necessarily need to be able to hear every lyric, every single line in death metal, but I do quite like to be able to hear the majority of the vocals, the majority of the lyrics. That's what I think makes vocalists like Sven from Aborted, Chris Barnes, trying to think, John Tardy. There's some vocalists, you can hear what they're saying, and it kind of pays off, I like it. But good vocals as well. Not copycat in any way. Doesn't sound like another Corpse Grinder. Doesn't sound like another Chuck. Distinct stuff. This is a great album. Great opener, but the second track, Tow Rope Around the Throat, that track should almost be banned for being so monstrously groovy. It is out of this world groove. It's almost too groovy for death metal. It's an absolute monster of a track. Those riffs, wow. Wow. Someone give these guys an award, because freaking hell. That is a beast. Absolute monster. An album standout for me. That will level mosh pits. That will implode brains, and I freaking love it. Other beastly tracks here, we got Stifling Stew, Itty Bitty Pieces. It's all great entertaining stuff. Although maybe Phallic Filth, complete with its disgusting kind of noise effects. Yeah, interesting intro that will conjure many a mental image that you want to forget. But Phallic Filth, that aside, rips into some great riffs. Slave to the Scalpel is freaking great. Great title track. Drilling Your Head. The whole album, really good. Not very long at all. Less than 30 minutes. I think it's actually about 26, 27 minutes long. So not overly long at all. But a really good, groovy death metal album. Freaking excellent. So then that brings us up to date with the most recent album, Manual Manic Procedures 2024. This album's so freaking good. Just take this out, because that cover I just showed you there is the censored one. This is the actual full explicit album cover. Just give you a second to absorb the absolute disgust there. Yeah, that's gross. That I think that gives most extreme album covers a run for their money. It is revolting. So we have got a lineup change in that we've now got Raymond McDonald on guitars. Look at that. Disgusting stuff. But such a good album. An absolute monster of an album that deserves all the praise that it's been getting for being a standout of 2024. I think there's some particular highlights, because I have talked about this album quite a bit on the channel. I don't want to go into it too much again, but this album is really strong. You can tell that there's a lot of growth between Slave to the Scalpel 2021 and Manual Manic Procedures 2024. They've clearly grown, but what I think is really good is that they have clearly found their sound quite early on. 200 Stab Wounds still sound very much like the same band that they were on Festering Piles or Slave to the Scalpel. They've got their sound and they've stuck with it. They've just grown. They've developed. So that in mind, Hands of Eternity, great intro there. Shows that kind of musical ability these guys have got. As I say, these guys are good players. They can play their instruments, not just make a hell of a noise. They can actually play them well. Great intro there through the very short and sweet and savage Gross Abuse. Manual Manic Procedures is a great one. Creepy, sinister, sludgy death metal. Freaking love it. Release the Stench. We've got Led to the Chamber, Liquefied. That is an interesting one. We've got a real kind of horror movie sounding intro. It's really eerie and sinister, and then it just grabs you by the throat and just launches you around the room like a freaking death metal poltergeist. Brilliant stuff. Flesh from Within, Defied Gestation, savage. Ride the Flatline is great, and Parasite, great stuff. Start to finish, this is a really strong album. Again, it's less than 30 minutes long, but it's really good. It's entirely captivating death metal. It does grab you, keeps you focused the whole time. I really honestly do feel that 200 Stab Wounds have something really quite special going on here. Not to say that they are one of a kind. There's a lot of great death metal bands coming up from the scene at the minute. You know, bands like Celestial Sanctuary, for example, who have also just signed to Metal Blade Records, interestingly enough. Yeah, there's a lot of great bands out there. But 200 Stab Wounds have something real special about them. Freaking great stuff. They've also got a few other releases. So we've got these 3 great releases. They've got some other singles. There's a 7-inch, the name of which escapes me at this time, which I haven't got, unfortunately. Listen to it on Spotify. Great stuff. Everything delivers. And there isn't a weak moment here. They are, without a doubt, a band that you need to hear. If you love good old Obituary, good old Cannibal Corpse, but you also love your more modern death metal, or maybe you enjoy more modern bands like Celestial Sanctuary, for example, or I don't know, even Necrot. We've got Skeletal Remains. You know, there's a lot of more modern death metal out, bands are out, and albums out. Good stuff. 200 Stab Wounds, freaking brilliant. Absolutely top notch, next level stuff. I can't really rank these albums and these tracks because they're all really freaking good. However, I would say that if you need proof that 200 Stab Wounds are a band you need to hear, the one you're going to want to reach for is the disgustingly gory cover, Manual Manic Procedures. What an album. A really great album. I'm always kicking myself for not picking up a copy of that earlier in 2024 when it was released, because it's so freaking good. It's an absolute standout. So, my friends, 200 Stab Wounds. If you like death metal and you like tons of groove, they are a band you need to hear. Mentioned all of these releases. I won't pick out individual tracks because these albums are pretty short and sweet, but give them all a spin. You know, in just over an hour and a quarter of your time, you can listen to all 3 of these releases, and it would be time very well spent. So check them out and let me know what you think. Are you already a fan of 200 Stab Wounds? What are your thoughts and opinions on this band? What are your thoughts and opinions on these releases? Let me know. Interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others as always. Thank you very much for watching this humble review. Don't forget to check out 200 Stab Wounds. But thanks again. Please do feel free to like, subscribe, share. The support is very much appreciated as always. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good, heavy things. Until next time, do take care of yourselves, listen to 200 Stab Wounds, and stay freaking heavy.